dreamer, but my heart's of gold. I had a runaway.
Let's open with a small mystery that's hiding in plain sight. Across country after country, women tend to live longer than men. And yet, they also often carry a heavier load of chronic illness in later life. So the question isn't just, why do women live longer? It's also, why doesn't that extra time automatically mean extra health?
That contradiction is the hook, right? We've improved survival so much over the last couple of centuries, but it doesn't magically turn humans into 150-year-old superathletes. We're living longer, but we're not living forever. Not even close.
Exactly. And today, we're going to connect three threads that usually live in separate conversations. First, women's longevity and what scientists are learning from so-called queens in nature. Second, our cultural obsession with immortality and the uncomfortable detail we love to ignore. And third, the way AI is already changing healthcare in very practical, very near-term ways.
So it's less, how do we become immortal tomorrow? And more, what are we actually learning? What's realistic, and what might change in our lifetime? Let's start with the queens of longevity idea. There's research energy right now around a concept you might hear described as a kind of reproductive resilience. Basically, the notion that in some species, the ability to reproduce successfully is linked with a body that also resists aging longer than you'd expect. And this is where the animal cast gets interesting, because scientists aren't only comparing men and women. They're looking at species that break our usual rules, like queen bees, where one individual is wildly long-lived compared to others, and naked mole rats, which are famous for living a surprisingly long time for their size.
Right. We tend to tell ourselves a simple story. Reproduction drains the body, so more babies means a shorter life. But nature loves exceptions. If some creatures can be both highly fertile and unusually long-lived, that forces biologists to ask a deeper question. What biological deal are those bodies making that ours aren't? And then bringing it back to humans. Women live longer on average, but experience more years where chronic conditions accumulate. So the scientific task becomes less about women versus men as a competition and more about understanding the specific biology, hormones, immune function, metabolism, cellular repair that might tip the scales for lifespan and for healthspan. Healthspan is the key word there. Because if you add 10 years to life, but those years are dominated by frailty, pain, or cognitive decline, that's not the victory lap we imagine when we hear life extension. Which takes us straight into the bigger myth we're all raised on, whether we notice it or not, the dream of immortality. Humans have chased it through alchemy, legend, religion, and now biotech and silicon.
And our dreams tend to skip an important detail. Living forever is not the same as staying young. That sounds obvious, but we forget it the moment someone says, immortality. There's a classic cautionary tale about that. The idea that a person could live indefinitely, but still keep aging, becoming weaker, more dependent, cognitively diminished, until forever turns into a long, extended decline. That kind of immortality isn't a gift. It's a trap. So when people ask, will we live for centuries? I think the honest follow-up is, in what condition? Because if we can't preserve function, mobility, memory, independence, then the number alone is meaningless.
Now, here's another piece many people miss. The reason average life expectancy shot up over the last 2 centuries is mainly because far fewer people die early, especially infants, children, and mothers during childbirth. That's an extraordinary success story of sanitation, medicine, and public health. But it's different from extending the maximum human lifespan. Humans a long time ago could sometimes reach 90 or 100, and you can find historical records of that. What changed is that more people now survive long enough to even have a shot at old age. And medicine got really good at keeping us alive through things that used to be game over: heart disease managed by drugs, infections controlled by antibiotics, surgeries that by decades. That's not nothing. But it still hasn't rewritten the upper boundary of human life in a dramatic way. Which raises the stubborn question, why is aging still so hard to beat? For a while, some people hoped there might be one simple off switch, like a single gene that says, time's up. If we could just flip that, we'd solve aging. But biology rarely offers one villain. Aging looks more like a messy crowd: DNA damage, inflammation, cellular senescence, metabolic shifts, immune changes, loss of tissue regeneration, and probably things we haven't named yet. You don't defeat a crowd by arguing with one person.
Now let's pivot to the technologies people imagine when they imagine escaping aging. First up, hibernation. Science fiction loves the idea that you can sleep through time. You're not younger, you're not immortal, you just skip the boring centuries. In real life, researchers are interested in versions of that, but usually for shorter windows, stabilizing trauma patients, supporting extreme medical situations, maybe one day enabling longer missions. The fantasy version is, go to sleep in 2026, wake up in 2126. Still basically you.
Then there's cryonics, freezing bodies or brains after death in the hope that future science can repair whatever killed you and reverse the damage of freezing itself. A lot of scientists are skeptical because freezing can destroy delicate cellular structures. And if the brain structure is damaged, the you're trying to preserve may not be recoverable. But even if it's a long shot, people do it because the emotional math is simple. If the chance is tiny but non-zero, it feels better than zero. Another popular thought experiment is, what if we could transplant a brain into a new, healthy body? It's a clean sci-fi premise. Keep the person, swap the parts. And then reality shows up and says, have you seen how complicated the wiring is? The brain isn't like swapping a battery. The number of connections, the integration with the spinal cord, the immune system issues, it's far beyond what we can do. Even more extreme is head transplantation, which is often discussed as if it's almost there. But reconnecting a spinal cord reliably and preventing rejection are enormous barriers, and there are massive ethical problems on top of the medical ones. And then there's the most futuristic one: the brain as data. The notion that your memories, personality, and mind could be copied or transferred into another brain or into a machine. It's a powerful idea because, philosophically, it asks, are you your body, or are you your information? If information doesn't disappear in the universe, if it persists in some form, could a far future civilization reconstruct a mind the way we reconstruct an ancient text from fragments?
Even if that's possible in theory, it's not something we can operationalize today. We don't know how to read a whole mind out of the brain like a file, and we certainly don't know how to write it into a new substrate in a way that preserves identity. So, with all those grand visions, it's easy to miss the most important point. The next big gains are likely to be incremental and medical. Less, upload your consciousness. More, detect disease earlier. Personalize treatment. Slow degeneration. Restore specific function.
And that's where AI enters the story, not as a magical immortality machine, but as an amplifier for healthcare. We're already seeing systems that interpret medical images at a level that can rival, and in some tasks even outperform, human specialists. One of the headline examples is AI analyzing CT scans to spot lung cancer risks. That matters because early detection is everything. Finding cancer sooner often means more options, less aggressive treatment, and better outcomes. And it's not only imaging. AI is being used to comb through parts of our DNA that used to be dismissed as junk, including not coding regions that don't build proteins but do influence how genes are regulated. That kind of work is uncovering new genetic links to complex conditions, like autism, by finding patterns humans might miss. Which is a good moment to address a fear many clinicians have: is AI going to replace doctors? The more realistic question is, which parts of healthcare can be automated safely, and how do we use that to free clinicians for the human work? Because reading thousands of scans, triaging routine cases, or spotting subtle signals across large datasets, those are areas where machines can help. And we're also seeing AI paired with wearables. Imagine a wrist sensor collecting signals continuously, and then a model learns to recognize patterns that indicate a heart condition that's often missed in regular checkups. That doesn't make you immortal, but it can prevent sudden crises, extend life, and improve quality of life. There's another practical piece too. Healthcare systems are starting to build the administrative plumbing for AI, things like billing codes and clinical pathways. That sounds boring, but it's how technology becomes routine instead of a flashy demo.
Now let's connect this back to women and longevity. If women live longer but face more chronic disease burden, then AI and modern biology should be asking, are our diagnostic tools trained equally well for women? Are symptoms recognized as quickly? Are treatments tested adequately across sexes? Are we building medicine around an average patient who doesn't exist? And this is where prioritize the girls in the lab isn't a slogan. It's a scientific strategy. If gender differences shape immune responses, hormone cycles, disease presentation, and aging pathways, then studying them deeply isn't optional. It's how you build medicine that works.
Also, the queen animals are a reminder that biology contains alternative playbooks. If evolution has already produced bodies that combine high reproductive success with unusual longevity, then the mechanisms exist in nature. We just don't fully understand the instruction manual. So will we ever live for centuries? My answer is, maybe one day, but it's not going to arrive as a single invention. It's more likely to come from stacked breakthroughs, better prevention, earlier detection, smarter drugs, targeted regeneration, and maybe therapies that slow the underlying biology of aging. And if that happens, it changes everything. If humans routinely live 2 or 3 times as long in good health, you're not just changing medicine. You're changing careers, families, politics, economics, and the way we think about risk and meaning. But there's a sober footnote. Even if the far future holds centuries-long life, it's unlikely to be evenly distributed at first. Which raises ethics. Who gets access? Who gets left behind? And what counts as an acceptable trade-off? So here's the takeaway I want to leave people with. The most exciting longevity story right now isn't a promise of immortality. It's a shift from fantasy to precision, asking why women live longer, learning from queens and mole rats, building AI tools that catch disease earlier, and chasing a future where added years are added in strength, not in suffering. More years, more life inside the years. That's the real win. And if you're listening and thinking, okay, but what can I do with this today? The practical answer is boring but powerful. Prevention, checkups, sleep, movement, evidence-based screening, and paying attention to early symptoms. The futuristic answer, regeneration, deep genetic repair, mind uploading, those are open questions. The near-term answer is doing the basics, while science fights for the next set of tools. Next episode, we can go deeper into the health span versus lifespan gap, what actually drives those chronic years at the end, and which interventions look most promising without crossing into hype.
Deal. And for now, remember, the queens of longevity aren't just a clever headline. They're a clue. If nature already solved parts of the puzzle in other species, the best thing we can do is study it carefully and make sure our science serves everyone who ages, not just the default subjects we've always used. Please subscribe at IamHealthyMoney.com and visit us at Q&A with Kim N. Ray on YouTube. It would mean so much more than you know. I will continue to bring you fascinating subjects with all the research so you don't have to do it all alone. We will learn together. And then wait until the end of each video for a sneak peek into the next research project.
Life has its ups and downs, but you're not alone. From 10 to 110, we're in this together right here, right now. We love ya.